They said I was too poor to sit at the family table. My cousin filmed me walking away, posting online, "She doesn't belong with us." Thousands laughed while my parents quietly liked the video. For years I swallowed the shame, convinced I was the flaw in their perfect picture. But when they strutted into the reunion venue, ready to boast about their legacy, they didn't expect the truth waiting for them. The sign above the lobby read, "Morgan Legacy Hotel." My hotel. Their laughter stopped cold. This time the story wasn't theirs, it was mine. I had spent most of my 36 years mastering the art of disappearing. At family gatherings, I was the quiet shadow standing in the corner, the one cropped out of photos. The name politely omitted when relatives bragged about their children's careers. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was better off unseen than mocked. But when the Morgan family reunion was announced, my absence wasn't an accident, it was a decision. They chose the most extravagant hotel in the city, a gleaming tower of marble and glass. From the moment the first cousin uploaded a glossy video of the chandeliered lobby, the narrative began. "Look how perfect we are." They laughed into their phones, champagne glasses raised, siblings pressed shoulder to shoulder like some golden dynasty. Every clip screamed family goals, and every clip omitted me. I wasn't even a blurred figure in the background this time. When someone accidentally panned too far and caught my face at the edge of a shot, the video was re-edited before it went public. My image was erased as though I had never stood there at all. Do you know what it feels like to watch your bloodline scrub you out of existence? To see the world celebrate their illusion while you are forced to ask yourself if you ever belonged in the first place? I sat at home with my phone glowing in the dark, scrolling through their posts, heart pounding with a familiar cocktail of anger and shame. Comment after comment praised their closeness, their elegance, their unity, the perfect Morgan family, perfect except for the daughter they pretended had never been born. I told myself I shouldn't look, but I couldn't stop. It was like pressing on a bruise, needing to feel the ache to know it was real. And then came the blow that split the thin shell of denial I'd wrapped around myself. Liam, my younger cousin, the one who had always sneered behind his hand when I wore second-hand dresses or drove my dented car, decided mockery wasn't enough. He opened his phone, grinned into the camera, and recorded what would become his most viral TikTok yet. "She's too poor for this reunion," he said, laughing. The camera cut to an empty chair at their grand banquet table. "Guess who didn't make the guest list? Rachel Morgan." The room erupted in laughter behind him. Someone clinked a glass. And then I saw it. My parents, my own mother and father, sitting in the background of that video. They weren't looking away in embarrassment. They weren't telling him to stop. They were smiling. And when the video went live, I watched their names appear beneath it, tiny hearts glowing red. They had liked it. It felt like a blade sliding between my ribs. I replayed the clip over and over, my hands trembling so badly I almost dropped the phone. Each time I hoped I had imagined it, that maybe their names hadn't really been there. But no, the proof burned on the screen. Their laughter wasn't enough. They wanted the world to know they approved of my humiliation. I didn't cry. That surprised me. The Rachel of 5 years ago would have collapsed, sobbing into her pillow until sleep took her away from the pain. But this time, the tears refused to come. Instead, my breath steadied. I reached for a pen, scribbled on the margin of a receipt lying on my desk. Video ID 235, not rage, not grief. Just a quiet, deliberate note, as if I had begun a ledger without knowing why. My phone buzzed again, a notification lighting the screen. Liam's video was exploding. Tens of thousands of likes. Comments piling up, strangers laughing at the invisible cousin, too poor to be worth inviting. The humiliation wasn't confined to a hotel ballroom anymore. It was spreading, digital venom coating my name. I should have shut the phone off. Should have walked away, but I kept watching, feeling something strange stir beneath the humiliation. Not fury exactly, but a spark, small and sharp. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling, letting the sound of their laughter echo in my ears. And then I whispered into the silence of my apartment, though no one could hear me. So, this is what I am to them. But I wrote down the timestamp anyway, because deep inside, some part of me already knew I wasn't keeping these receipts to torture myself. I was keeping them because one day they might need to be shown. The illusion of the golden family shimmered across every screen. And yet a crack had formed in its surface, so small no one else could see it. But I could. And once a crack appears, it never stays small for long. I closed my eyes and let the glow of my phone fade into black. For the first time, I wasn't wondering how to belong. I was wondering how long it would take for the cracks to shatter the cage completely. The morning after Liam's video went viral, my phone buzzed with a new notification. A private message, no profile picture, just a blank avatar. At first I thought it was another stranger eager to mock me, but when I opened it, my breath caught. Attached was a screenshot of the Morgan family group chat. I hadn't seen that chat in years. They'd removed me a long time ago, but now the words lit the screen like poison. Make sure the banquet menu doesn't have any of her cheap favourites, one cousin typed. Don't worry, she won't be there, another replied. Someone added a laughing emoji and wrote, Rachel is practically a stranger now, not really a Morgan, is she? The laughter echoed in text form, stabbing sharper than any spoken insult. And then, at the bottom of the thread, the words from my mother. She knows she doesn't belong. Let's not make a scene by bringing her up. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. My chest tightened, but still, the tears didn't come. Instead, I whispered into the silence, almost like I was talking to someone watching over my shoulder. If it were you, would you trust the one who sent this? Because that was the question. The anonymous sender wasn't mocking me. They were giving me ammunition. But why? Who among them would risk betraying the golden illusion for me? The message ended with 4 words, You deserve the truth. I saved the screenshot, my fingers cold against the glass. The venom was spreading, not only through their laughter, but through the secrecy, the cracks in their unity. Someone was on my side, or playing a crueler game I hadn't yet understood. That night, I sat by the window as the city lights blinked against the darkness. I thought of the family I had grown up with, how every Christmas and every summer barbecue had been used to remind me of my shortcomings. My job wasn't glamorous enough, my clothes weren't stylish enough, my life never measured against the shimmering standard of the Morgans. And now they didn't just see me as the lesser sibling, they saw me as a liability, a stain on their carefully polished name. The second screenshot arrived just as I was convincing myself the first had been a mistake. Another sliver of the chat. This time the words were even sharper. "Rachel's always been the weak one," wrote my aunt. "She drags us down," said my father, and then my mother's voice again, cutting through the thread. "She embarrasses us." Maybe it's time to cut her off completely, even from the will. My stomach turned to ice. The inheritance had never mattered to me. I had built my own way, brick by brick, but to hear them plotting to erase me, not just from photos, not just from gatherings, but from the very bloodline itself. It carried a cruelty deeper than money. It was the erasure of identity. I closed my eyes, letting the words settle like ash. Years ago, that kind of betrayal would have shattered me. I would have begged, pleaded for acceptance, bent myself into whatever shape they wanted just to be allowed back in. But now, something else stirred, not rage, not grief, something cleaner, sharper, a spark of clarity. I replayed their sentences in my mind. And for the first time, I didn't feel small. I saw the pattern, the way they'd always used me as their scapegoat, the lightning rod to ground every storm in the family. If a cousin failed an exam, it was compared to my supposed laziness. If an uncle's business went bankrupt, my bad luck was whispered as the curse. "Rachel only makes us look bad," my father had typed. I whispered it aloud, let the bitterness of his words coat my tongue. And then, in the quiet that followed, I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because I realized how predictable it all was. The scapegoat wasn't chosen because she was the weakest. She was chosen because she was the strongest. The one who could bear their poison and still survive. I looked back at the screen, at the final words of my mother, cut her from the will. And for the first time in years, my heart didn't break. Instead, my pulse quickened with a strange sense of power. They thought erasing me from paper would erase me from existence. They thought money was the bloodline, that legacy was measured in estates and inheritances. But I had a different kind of legacy, one they hadn't noticed, one they would soon walk into with their heads held high, unaware of the ground crumbling beneath them. I saved the second screenshot, tucked it away with the first. My ledger was growing, my case was building. As the night deepened, I pressed my forehead against the cool glass of the window. "If they cut me from their blood," I whispered, "where will I draw my strength?" The answer flickered in my mind, a glint I wasn't ready to name. But it was there, waiting. And when the time came, I knew the venom they'd poured into me would become the very poison that unravelled them. The reunion fell on a Saturday, a day the Morgans had hyped for weeks across their curated feeds. Photos of gowns laid out on silk sheets, suits pressed to perfection, hashtags dripping with self-congratulation. I wasn't invited, but part of me still wanted to see, to remind myself I had once been part of that picture. So I dressed in quiet defiance, nothing extravagant, just a black dress and heels that carried me with more dignity than they would ever grant me. When I reached the hotel, the marble lobby shimmered under golden light, laughter spilling from the ballroom. For a moment I hesitated at the entrance, inhaling the perfume of roses and champagne, the sound of clinking glasses. Maybe, I thought, just maybe, I could walk in. But before I stepped forward, a hand pressed to my shoulder. A man in a black suit, expression blank, blocked my path. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "you're not on the guest list." I tried to push past, confusion tightening my chest. "I'm family," I told him. "I'm Rachel Morgan." His eyes flickered with recognition, then hardened. "I know who you are. The instruction came directly from your family. You're not allowed inside." The words cracked through me like glass shattering. Not a clerical error, not a misunderstanding. My own blood had signed my exclusion in ink. Around me, people had begun to notice. Phones rose into the air like weapons, lenses aimed at me, recording the moment. A woman whispered loudly to her friend, "Is that the one? The poor cousin?" And then, as if on cue, a voice from behind the cameras laughed. "She really showed up? What a joke!" The crowd rippled with cruel amusement. Screens lit up as live streams began, the humiliation spreading faster than I could breathe. Comments flashed across the feeds. "They really banned her? That's cold. Guess she didn't get the memo. OMG, this is sad," but not all the comments laughed. Some voices pierced through the mockery. "Why would a family do this to their own? This isn't right. She looks devastated." For the first time, strangers, the faceless audience, saw me not as invisible, but as human. The Morgan's perfect image cracked under the weight of public scrutiny, though in the moment it felt like little more than a faint echo against the roaring tide of shame. I froze in the doorway, my pulse pounding in my ears. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to flee before the entire city saw me crumble. My heels wobbled as I turned away, the guard's eyes still flat, impersonal, as though he hadn't just watched a daughter barred by her own parents. I didn't make it far, just enough to collapse onto the curb, the neon lights of the city blurring into the tears I had sworn wouldn't come. Cameras followed, even there, flashes bursting like lightning. I was the spectacle they wanted, and I gave it to them by breaking. By the time I stumbled into my apartment that night, the laughter still rang in my ears. I poured whiskey into a glass, my hands unsteady, and swallowed until the burn dulled the ache in my chest. One glass, then another, until the world softened at the edges. The room spun, but I didn't care. I let myself fall into the couch, let the silence wrap around me like a shroud. My phone buzzed endlessly with notifications, the videos of my humiliation spreading across platforms. I couldn't bear to look. Instead, my mind dragged me backward into the shadows of memory. I was 12 again, standing in the kitchen while my mother adjusted my sister's hair before a school recital. My dress was plain, a hand-me-down, the hem fraying at the edges. "You'll stay in the back," she told me. "Don't distract anyone. You'll never shine like your sister." The words had seared themselves into my bones, and now, decades later, they echoed with a cruelty that hadn't dulled. I closed my eyes against the memory, but it pressed harder, forcing me to see every moment I had been pushed aside, diminished, told I was less. I thought I had grown numb to it, but tonight proved I was wrong. I whispered into the empty room, though no one was there to hear. Maybe they're right. Maybe I was never meant to be more than the shadow. The whiskey warmed me, blurred me, made me weightless. I wanted to sink, to disappear beneath it all, to stop feeling the sting of their rejection. My fingers curled tight around the glass, as if it were the only thing tethering me to this world. The city hummed outside my window, alive and indifferent. Inside, I was nothing but silence and shame, curled small in the corner of my own life. And in that hollow moment, I asked myself the question that terrified me most. Was this the end? The night after the reunion debacle stretched endlessly. whiskey still clinging to my breath, shame still raw in my veins. I lay on the couch in half darkness, scrolling aimlessly, too tired to feel, but too restless to sleep. That's when my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar notification. No name, just a number. The message read, "Rachel, look closer at the venue. They're in your hotel." I sat up too fast, the room tilting. My first instinct was disbelief. Spam, maybe a cruel prank. But something inside me forced my thumb to hover over the words, reading them again and again until my pulse quickened. I pulled out my laptop, my hands shaking, as I typed into the property registry search bar. The results came back in seconds. Owner, Rachel Morgan. It was true, I had signed the final papers 3 years ago after years of clawing my way upward in silence. Every late night of overtime, every small investment carefully nurtured, every sacrifice had led me to that deed. But I had kept it hidden. Why? Because even as I signed my name across the dotted line, I had heard my mother's voice in the back of my head. "You'll never shine like your sister." I had buried my triumph beneath layers of fear, convinced that even ownership wouldn't earn their recognition. Now, though, the truth stared back at me, undeniable. I whispered aloud, as if confessing to the night, "This is mine." The words filled the room, stronger than whiskey, sharper than shame. My chest rose with something fierce, something I hadn't felt in years. Rage, yes, but laced with clarity. I turned to the window where the city lights flickered, whispering not just to myself, but to anyone who might be listening, even you. If it were you, would you reveal it now? Or would you wait until the moment their pride is highest, to let the fall break them completely? The choice pulsed inside me, a storm forming in the quiet of my apartment. Sleep didn't come that night. Instead, plans began to weave themselves, threads I hadn't realized I was already spinning. By morning, I was in my office downtown. The quiet hum of computers and the faint scent of coffee wrapping around me like armour. My assistant, loyal and discreet, raised an eyebrow at my sudden arrival. "I need everyone I trust," I said, "today." They gathered quickly, managers, staff, the people who had built this place beside me, without ever asking why their boss kept her identity from the world. I told them everything, my voice steady, the humiliation still hot enough to sear. I described the reunion, the videos, the guard at the door. Then I told them the part I had never admitted to anyone. "They think I'm too poor, too small to matter," I said, my gaze sweeping across them. "But when they walked into that ballroom, they walked into my hotel, and I want the world to know it." Silence followed, heavy but electric. Then a manager leaned forward, eyes bright. "What do you need us to do?" We spent hours sketching the blueprint of their downfall. Every detail had to be precise, every move deliberate, not destruction for destruction's sake, but exposure, truth laid bare where no denial could hide it. The banners would be replaced. Every digital screen, every LED display in the lobby would flash one message: Morgan Legacy Hotel, owned by Rachel Morgan. Guest lists would be cross-checked, ensuring the family couldn't twist the story later, and invitations would be sent, not to more relatives, but to the city's reporters, local bloggers, influencers who thrived on scandal. If the Morgans wanted an audience, I would give them one they could never control. I didn't want to stop their party. That would make me no better than them. No, I wanted them to celebrate at full volume, bask in the glow of their own arrogance, until the curtain dropped and revealed the truth. The staff nodded, energized, their loyalty burning brighter than I deserved. We'll make it happen, they promised. By dusk, the pieces were already in motion. I walked through the lobby of my hotel, unseen, unnoticed, watching as the workers prepared. The smell of fresh polish clung to the marble, the chandeliers gleamed. Soon these walls would hold a different kind of light, the glare of exposure. I paused beneath the grand staircase, tilting my head back to study the banners that would soon carry my name. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the family's shadow. I felt like fire waiting for oxygen. The thought pulsed inside me as I stepped back into the night. When they walk through these doors again, everything will change. And I smiled, not bitter this time, but sharp, knowing. When they arrive, I whispered into the darkness. What will happen then? The day of their reckoning arrived draped in glitter. My family swept into the lobby as if they owned it, sequins catching the light, their laughter rising like a chorus of triumph. Phones hovered in their hands, documenting every step. The Morgans knew how to perform for an audience, and today they expected applause. I watched from a balcony above, unseen, the hum of anticipation tight in my chest. I wanted them comfortable, wanted their pride swollen before the ground gave way beneath them. The first strike came from the front desk. "Welcome," the receptionist announced, her voice amplified, perfectly rehearsed. "Welcome to Morgan Legacy Hotel, owned by Ms. Rachel Morgan." The words cracked across the marble like thunder. Every camera tilted, every smile faltered. For a moment, silence flooded the space, heavy and absolute. Then, like glass breaking, voices rose, confused, incredulous. "What did she say?" my uncle stammered. "Impossible," my mother hissed, her face draining of colour, but the screens in the lobby confirmed it. Every LED panel blazed the same words: Morgan Legacy Hotel, owned by Rachel Morgan. The family turned in unison, their perfect choreography shattered. Their eyes scanned the lobby as if expecting me to materialise from the stone itself. I stayed where I was, watching them from above like a ghost, finally choosing to be seen. And then Liam, ever the loudest, stumbled backward. His phone slipped from his hand, clattering against the marble. His face turned crimson before draining white. I saw the memory hit him, the application he had submitted 6 months ago, desperate for a job at this very hotel. He had been rejected without a second glance, the email signed off by me. He fell to his knees as if the truth itself had struck him down. Cameras caught it all, live streams exploding with comments. Is this real? The poor cousin owns the hotel? This is poetic justice. From my perch above, I whispered to myself, and to you, perhaps, do I crush them now, or do I let them writhe in the mess they created? Below, the performance unravelled. My father shouted, "This is a trick!" My mother clutched her pearls, eyes darting like a trapped bird. Some cousins turned pale with shame, while others hissed venom, their voices cracking under the weight of exposure. And then came the collapse. "Rachel, please," one aunt sobbed, suddenly aware of the cameras circling. "We didn't mean it!" Her mascara ran in black rivers, streaking her face. Others weren't so quick to beg. "She set us up!" a cousin spat, pointing toward the screens. "She's nothing but a viper!" Their desperation tangled with fury, unravelling every thread of the golden facade. Outside, the storm spread. Reporters tweeted live from the lobby. Hashtags began to rise. Rachel Morgan, asked justice served, not the poor cousin. By the hour's end, my name was a banner across trending lists. Their mockery flipped into my vindication. Still, I didn't step down. Not yet. I let them twist, let the world watch them fracture. And then, through the chaos, a figure approached me quietly from behind the curtains of the balcony. My breath caught as she stepped into the light. My sister. The one who had always been the star, the favourite, the one my mother held up like a jewel while I was left in shadow. Her eyes were red, but not from anger. She held up her phone, showing me the messages she had leaked, the ones that had warned me of their betrayal. "It was me," she whispered. "I couldn't watch them destroy you anymore." The ground shifted beneath me in a different way. The sister who had basked in their approval, who had left me to fend for myself, was suddenly here, offering a hand I never thought she'd extend. "Rachel," she said, her voice trembling, "I want to stand with you." I stared at her, my heart a storm of conflict. Could I accept her now, after years of silence? Or was this just another performance, a new role cast in the ruins of the old? Down below, my family screamed, begged, cursed, their empire of lies crumbling under its own weight. Above, my sister's hand hovered between us, fragile, waiting. And I wondered, with the world watching and justice finally mine, do I let her in or close the door forever? The Morgan name, once polished like gold, lay tarnished in the public eye. Every news outlet ran the footage, the family's cruel laughter at my exclusion, their faces crumbling when the hotel's ownership was revealed. For decades they had crafted an illusion of unity, of superiority. Now the world saw the fractures I had lived with all my life. Strangers filled comment sections with outrage. How could they treat their own blood like that? Rachel Morgan deserves better. Hashtags rose like wildfire. Rachel Morgan. Family justice. The forgotten daughter. Inside the hotel, the storm settled into awkward silence. Some cousins slipped away, ashamed to be caught on the wrong side of the narrative. Others clung stubbornly to denial. My mother sat rigid, refusing to look at me, her pride still armour even as it rusted. But not everyone stayed silent. My aunt, who had once called me the family's embarrassment, approached me in tears. "Rachel," she whispered, her voice raw. "I was wrong. I should never have stood by while they cut you down." Her apology shook me, not because I believed it fully, but because it was the first time anyone from that circle had dared to break the script. My father, too, wavered. His voice cracked as he muttered, We should have been proud of you." It wasn't enough, not after years of betrayal, but it was something. And in that moment, as cameras still hovered and the world still watched, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself in years. Tears welled in my eyes, uninvited. They slid down my cheeks, not for vengeance, not for triumph, but because for the first time I felt the scales tip toward justice. I cried not out of cruelty but out of release. My pain, so long silenced, was finally visible, and in that fragile pause I wondered, do I cling to this anger, let it define me, or do I choose something else? Would I carry hate, or would I let it go? The choice loomed heavy, a cliff's edge I hadn't yet crossed. In the days that followed, the Morgans fractured further. Some continued to curse my name, convinced I had orchestrated their downfall. Others disappeared from the public eye altogether. But a few reached out, apologising, even offering to make amends. I didn't answer them all. Not because I sought revenge, but because I no longer needed their validation. I had finally understood something vital. Family isn't blood, it's choice. And so I chose. I founded a trust, using part of my wealth to build a fund for those cast aside by their families. The applications poured in, letters from sons disowned for who they loved, daughters silenced by favouritism, siblings forgotten in the shadows. Their words cut deep, reflections of my own life. But they also lit a fire in me. I could turn my pain into purpose. With each story I read, I felt less alone. Slowly, I built a new kind of family, a circle not bound by name or legacy, but by empathy. My staff, my friends, survivors who had clawed their way back from rejection, they became my chosen family. Together, we forged something stronger than the Morgan name had ever been. One evening, after the storm of headlines had quieted, I found myself on the rooftop of the hotel. The city stretched out before me, alive and endless. The first streaks of dawn painted the horizon, soft pinks and oranges rising from the dark. I closed my eyes, letting the breeze carry away the last remnants of shame. For once, the future didn't frighten me. It called to me. But as I turned to leave, my hand brushed against the edge of an old oak desk my mother had left behind in one of the upper suites. A drawer stuck slightly ajar. Curiosity tugged at me. Inside lay a yellowed envelope, my name scrawled in my mother's handwriting. I froze. The seal was unbroken. My breath caught as my fingers traced the familiar script. Why had she hidden this? What truth lay folded inside? I stood in the quiet dawn, the letter heavy in my hands. For all that had been revealed, for all the justice I had finally claimed, a new question now loomed, darker and sharper than the rest. What secret had my mother carried all these years? And was I ready to face it?